Okay guys, we're going to try something a little bit different and walk you through the process of building something and putting together our thoughts and the way that we're coming up with the solutions. And we're going to start by building this PVC piston. The only things that we're not using besides PVC is two little O-rings. Besides that, everything else in this piston is going to be PVC. So to do that, we have a whole bunch of different parts. I'll have a whole material list in the description, but I'm going to walk you through basically what we're going to do. So the important part is that we have an outer shell, which is going to be 2-inch pipe, 2-inch PVC, and the inner, which is going to be 3/4. Now, it doesn't exactly matter how long they are, as long as the 3/4 is about 3 to 4 inches longer than the 2-inch pipe. So you can make this really short or really long. It just depends on how far you want to be able to go with your piston. Okay, so for this build, we're going to need a couple tools. A drill, some drill bits, most importantly a 3/8 or 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch or so. And we're going to need some glue. So with those, I've got some 1/4 inch tap here that just helps me get a better seal on the fittings that we're going to put on there, but it's not necessary on this PVC. You can actually kind of just force these fittings in and it'll work just fine, but I had this lying around, so I'm going to use it. And then breakdown of what we're trying to do is that pistons create a pressure difference between one side and the other side. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take and make a piston that seals the inside of this guy so that we can create a pressure difference on different sides and make it move back and forth. And so to do that, we're going to use this little rubber O-ring here that is a 1.25 inches. Like I said, I'll have links in the description with this guy, and he fits in just perfect. So this is the key to this whole thing working. So he is the middle piston. We're going to attach the rod with a little screw here so that we can change this change these parts out, make things longer, make things shorter. We're going to have a couple ends for the piston, which are going to go on here. And then we're going to have the butt end. We've got two different screw caps here, and that's so that we can, once we put these screw caps in, that's going to keep this guy from being able to slide out because he can't fit through here, right? So if for whatever reason I need to pressurize one side and I don't want him coming out, then having this extra screw cap will be nice. Also, I think it looks kind of cool. So that's going to be one end. And then the other end, what we're going to do, we're going to put this on here just to make it easy to remove. And then we're going to have, what we need to do is we need to create a seal around the piston, right? Because if we're trying to create pressure, a pressure difference between one side and another side to make this guy move, we need to make sure that this guy is sealed up on this end. And that's what this O-ring is for, because he'll seal on there and this won't seal there. So we're going to stick him into here. Well, we're going to cut a little piece off in this, stick them into here, stick this on here, glue that whole thing together, and now there's a seal for the piston. And this whole thing goes into there. Okay? So I've walked you through a little bit of what our plan is. Let's build it. So first things first, we're going to open up some of our fancy glues and primers. Okay, I'm gonna go put some gloves on. Okay, so first things first, we're going to go through and prime these connections here. And I'm doing this over my work table that I don't really care too much for. It's been beaten up, and yeah, so a little bit here or there is not going to be a big deal. But if you're doing this on your kitchen counter, throw down a drop cloth or a piece of cardboard or something. So we're going to put this screw coupler, female end, right here, and this is going to let us put our back piece in. And we're going to put another screw coupler in the front, and this is going to help us maintain a level of interoperability and being able to reuse pieces. If you needed a different size piston, or maybe your use case is just a little bit different. My use case is having fun and teaching you guys a little bit about how this stuff works, because I'm a hands-on type of guy, and that's really where I love to be. So here's our piston. This is all we're leaving it. We might go through and clean up some of this and do some other stuff, but we're gonna use this as the base for everything else, so that if we needed to make this longer or make it shorter, all you need to do is go get 2 more of these guys and change your length here, and then everything will be great. So we're gonna set that aside, and we're gonna work on our plug here. So this is gonna go back in here so that we can create a pressure differential on the bottom side of the piston. And to do that, we're going to drill a hole in this guy so that we can insert a fitting. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here. You can see okay. So that's a 3/8 hole. It's not quite big enough for what we need. So I'm just going to go through, kind of round it out, try to make them just a little bit bigger for my little tap over there to catch right. So now that that hole's there, I'm just going to take my tap and hand start him, because this PVC is nice and soft compared to most things. Super easy to work with, which is why I picked it for this project. Also, it's not very expensive, unlike some other things that are nice to work with. So, as you can see, I'm just taking a crescent wrench and tapping this hole with a 1/4 inch pipe thread. Now, you can do it whatever size you want. I am planning on sticking these little quick connects on, just because I had them for, I got them for this project, and 1/4 inch is usually what most people in the pneumatics world run. It's kind of just big enough to do everything you need it to do for most use cases. So we've got that guy. So you can maybe see, not quite, but we do have threads on there. And I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy and thread him in. So now he is one of my places of pressure. And in a cylinder, you don't care about absolute pressure. I mean, you do, but it's more about pressure between one side and the other side. That's how you get everything to move. And so this is going to provide pressure on this bottom side. And now we're going to go create, put this guy in here. Come on, there we go. So that will provide pressure on the bottom side. And if you remember, our piston won't get past this or run into it because of this bigger screw coupler here. It just fits just perfect. So let's do the top side now. So we know the top side, we're gonna screw in this guy here, but before we start messing and doing stuff here, what I'm gonna do is we're actually gonna take this guy and do the same thing, but we're gonna put him just at the base of this here, so that this guy will fit in with still a lot of places to glue, but we can make sure that we're getting pressure to the other side of the piston so that, like I said, we can create that difference in pressure. So let's do that. I'm gonna take him. Same thing we did with the other one, make it just a little bit wider. And we're gonna have the time of our lives because we don't need no education. Okay, so we're gonna take this guy just like I did with the last one and start the tap. So we can go through, and I actually want to go far enough that this guy will stop. So I'm gonna have him go in, but I want him to go in far enough to stop this guy from seating all the way. So then he's not crooked, or making sure that this guy's outlet isn't blocked, because if you stick this all the way down in there, it's not doing anything. You're just gonna sit there and pressurize a whole lot of nothing on this side, and your piston's only gonna move in one direction, which we all know is not great and basically only for little girls. So, just kidding. If you like one direction, that's fine. Just a joke. But we do live in 2018, so. All right, so that's in there. He's poking through here, and that's stopping him from being able to seat all the way. So we're gonna take this, prime this guy up, and glue him on. Okay, there's some stuff there. Get some glue. Get some glue up in here. Okay, so we got that. And now we're gonna put this guy until he hits that guy right in there. Perfect, just like that. So now we know that we have one to go on the top and one to go on the bottom. So that is the magic that makes all these cylinders work. So the other magic is making sure that we can create seals on the piston moving and on the rod coming out. So to do that, let's start with the piston. As I was showing you before, we're going to create the piston out of these two pieces. They are 1 inch or 1 1/4 inches. This one is 1 1/4 inch cap, and this one's 1 1/4 inch to a 3/8 screw. And that's so that we can take this 3/8 and screw him onto there and glue this guy into there. So then we can swap out our barrels if we needed a longer or shorter one, and then we don't have to worry about making another piston every single time. So the magic to this whole thing is this little O-ring right here. Just so happens to fit perfectly inside of that 2-inch pipe. So we're just gonna go ahead and glue this guy together so he's not falling apart. Okay. And then glue this guy. Cool. And we're gonna push that together, but we don't really want to like completely cover this gasket in glue, but it's probably gonna happen. Just go through with your finger, or I'm wearing gloves because I don't want purple hands for the rest of like 3 days. And then just wipe this off and wipe it on the table if you have a shitty table, crappy table, damn it. And then we're gonna go through and do this guy, because he is our piston, our pistone. So okay, so that has way more glue than it's ever gonna need, but that's way better than way less glue than it's ever gonna need. So he is going to, like I said, screw onto here. If I could, you know, do things. He's gonna screw onto here, and that is our piston. Now, all you pneumatic people and all you other mechanical people, you're gonna notice something. And that is that this piston is gonna have significantly more push force than it is gonna have pull force. Now, as I was saying, the magic in pistons is that we're creating a pressure differential between one side and the other side. So if we have, you know, more pressure on this side, it's gonna push this side. But if you look, we do not have an even amount of surface area to be pushing against. So some pressure on this side versus some pressure on this side's gonna win because it has more place for the air to push. And so this particular design is gonna have significantly more push power than it is gonna have pull power, because there's less surface area on this side of the piston versus this side. So that is one of the downsides, but it's important to make note of that and understand what it is that's happening, so that when you're trying to design another system around these kind of constraints, you can say, oh, well, I know that this is better at pushing than pulling, so let's flip it upside down instead of doing it, you know, the first way I thought of, because now I know that it pushes more than pulls. Basically, all pneumatic cylinders are like that, but most of them are more or less insignificantly different. But because this rod is so big in the middle, it is significant. So right now I'm putting a little bit of air tool oil on this, and that's just to help get this thing slide in. So we're gonna go ahead, give this a little twist and push, and it fits in perfect right in there. Awesome. So right here we're bottomed out, and this is where I was talking about those extra 3 to 4 inches. If you cut it too short, you're not gonna know where this guy is. And if he unseats from this ring, it's gonna be all sorts of ski-wampus. So you wanna make sure that you have extra length on this guy. So the last trick in the book is that we're gonna get this O-ring to seal him, but he doesn't quite fit in this one. He slips through just a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of this 1-inch pipe that he doesn't slip through, cut it up into some little pieces, and then we're gonna stack those in. So I'll be right back. So I went and cut a couple little pieces of 1-inch here, and this is a 2-inch to inch and a, or 2-inch to 1.25 inches. This is 1.25 inches, sorry, I lied. And so we know that this guy doesn't quite fit inside of there, so we're gonna use that as the seal for this pipe here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick just a little bit of this stuff in first. Push that in basically as tight as I can by hand. We're gonna slip this over top here, screw him on, and then we're gonna take this other gasket that is a, it's like a 1 1/8 inch. I'm not sure off the top of my head. It's, like I said, I'm gonna make a whole list down in the description so that you have everything you need to build this yourself. So we put that around there, and then what I'm gonna do is take a little bit of this stuff, and we're gonna put a little bit of glue on this outside ring and slide him over top. That should provide us a good seal at the end of the piston. And oh, that's extra, too much. We got a little bit too much glue here, but not the worst thing in the world. We're going to take that, push him on, and we want to try to get that piston to sit right there in the center, or at least that this stem or rod or whatever. Someone knows the terminology better than I do, and I'm sure they'll let me know. So we're going to just stick that in there, let that glue sit, and that is our piston. Now we're going to have to do some more shenanigans to get it actually set up and functioning, and we're going to walk through that in just a second. And we're going to need some more tools and a whole bunch of other stuff, but for the sake of this little thing, we have ourselves a piston. You can connect whatever you're trying to push or pull right here, and you know, pull these out, put new ones on if some didn't seal quite right. Big reason I designed it this way, or came up with this idea, was just the replaceableness and the breaking down of the whole thing. So I'm gonna go grab the other stuff. Okay, so I went, grabbed all the stuff we need. We need an air compressor, or just compressed air. I've got a little solenoid valve here. I got some wires soldered onto it. This is a DC power supply to switch this solenoid valve on and off. Bunch of connectors, place to hook the compressed air to. Air to oil, we'll put some more in the piston, and then just some connections. So I'm gonna hurry and wire this guy up. And so the solenoid valve is important because what it does is it changes whether you're putting pressure in the top or in the bottom. And so the solenoid valve is just a nifty way to use electricity to change how your piston is going to act. So this particular valve P's pressure or power, one of the two, and we're going to screw in the connector that we have on our compressor. Just give it a couple small turns. I didn't put any Teflon tape or anything on. You should do that if you're trying to use this for any long amount of time. It's going to leak if you don't, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to thread everything in. These are the quick connectors for these hoses, the same type we put up there. So we're going to screw these guys in, give them just a little bit more torque that I can on my fingers. Okay, so those are cinched up. Now, in this valve, A is by default and B is when the valve is switched. So, depending on your use case, I'm gonna have default B retracted. So I'm gonna put A into the top, meaning that by default, pressure is gonna be pushing down, pulling the rod all the way down and seating this thing on the bottom. So this is the default state. And then when I want to push, the air switches from A to B, and then it pushes up through the bottom here, right? So we're gonna go ahead, plug in our air here, and nothing should happen. That seal did not seal. Okay, so troubleshooting. So that didn't work. Okay, so I just reseated that little guy. I'm gonna put just a little bit of air oil down around there. I think that it didn't quite have enough oil, and so it was just a little mad, and we're gonna fix that. He is seated, hopefully better this time. Tighten this guy back on, which is another reason I wanted to be able to pull these apart and get into that real easy, is because, you know, stuff's gonna break. That's meaning of life right there. PSI. The particular solenoid valve that I have will only operate at 25 PSI plus. So I'm gonna go to somewhere between 25 and 30 PSI and we're gonna try this again. We still have just a little bit of a leak up there, and if we click this, oh, that's great. Okay, so I figured out what the problem was. The problem was that the piston was actually coming all the way up and unseating from here and then hitting this guy without enough room to have the pressure push him back into the tube. He actually came out and was sitting just barely outside the thread. So what I did was I just cut a little notch in here and added a coupler, a little 3/4 coupler, and that just makes it so this guy will stop up on top before he hits the end. Okay, so I put the top back on, and then the other thing I did was I added just a little light switch. So now I don't have to mess with the power supply. It's just hooked up in line so that when it's on, the thing is switched. So we're gonna push him back down in. Gonna tighten him up. Everything is a little more oily than I would like, but yeah, here we are. Okay, so B is gonna go in the bottom and A is going into the top. So now I'm gonna take and hook up to the solenoid valve, and now I should be able to it ain't bad, not for a bunch of plastic. So we can go through and calculate how much pressure and everything's going through here, but that sounds like more math than I'd like to do right this second. If you're interested in that, let me know, because this is actually pretty simple physics. I'd love to do a video on it. I'm probably going to do one anyway because April doesn't know and I was going to walk her through it, so might as well make a video about it. But this is cool, easy project, and like I said, if you're like me, you're a hands-on learner, then I think it's hard not to do stuff with your hands. That's stupid. Why did I say that? So we got a lot of cool ideas coming up of what to do with this. I think I'm gonna make a video next week with this, building something else. So I'm gonna put a little subscribe thing up in here, so subscribe so you don't miss out on that, and let us know if you have any cool ideas that you think this would be good for. And as always, make on.